Hello, everyone. Welcome back. A very common question that I have been asked is, will the existing Polymer 80s be grandfathered in after the ATF finalizes their frames and receivers new rules on in June of 2022? So I refer to this as the June 2022 deadline. We have until then to build as many Polymer 80s as possible so we can get them grandfathered in, because I do believe that ultimately they will be grandfathered in. Okay, and I'm gonna go through a couple of points here that will explain to you guys why I think they will end up being grandfathered in. I don't think that that is what initially we're going to be hearing, but I think that that's where we're going to end up. Okay, so um, first thing, there's good. We got this before and after, right? So after when this ruling comes out, it will be important whether your frames were built or your frames were completed before the state or after that date in order for this issue to even matter to you. Now, in order for me to try and figure out what is going to happen, I have to look at a recent similar case, and that would be the bump stock ban. Okay, so with regards to the bump stocks, we know that thousands of them were sold. We know that very few of them were turned in, and we know that only one person was charged. Okay, um, and the bump stock charge against him was one out of several other charges. I believe this person was a prohibited person. I believe he had a felony, from what I've read. So out of all the charges against this person, they dropped the bump stock charge, right? Because they didn't want to, push that through the court and test that, right, to see if it would actually stand. So they backed away from that. So that by itself kind of tells me something, okay? Now, also important for us to consider is the person making this decision, the final decision, right? Who's finally signing off on this on this rule change, is an acting ATF director. Okay, the Congress has not confirmed an ATF director. The last person that they nominated was Chipman, which failed. So right now there's an acting ATF director who would be making the decision on this. So aside from the question of does a government agency have the power to make law, the further question is, does an acting director have the power to make law? So I think that that's also going to be a significant consideration as this moves forward. Okay. Now, with regards to the Polymer 80s, important for us to understand that millions of them have already been sold. Okay, I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that Polymer 80 sold more frames in 2021 than Glock did. Okay, so in 2021 and probably 2020 as well, I think that Polymer 80 sold more frames than Glock. Okay, so there's millions of them out there. That's also going to come back when, because at some point the question of are these commonly owned firearms going, are these, that's also going to come up. Now, also important to note that with regards to the serializing of firearms, right? That rule that went into effect in I think it was 69. I think it was 69. But whenever that law went into effect, 68 actually. I think it was the 60 in 68. So whenever that law went into effect that required the frames to be serialized, there was an exception built into that for guns prior to that date. Okay, so it's not uncommon to have factory-made guns out there in circulation today that don't have a serial number on them because they were built prior to 68. I actually have a couple of antiques like that don't have serial numbers on them because and I was able to get those guns transferred through an FFL, and basically where it says serial number, he put like NA, not available, okay, or something along those lines. So it is possible to legally purchase a firearm, a factory-made firearm that does not have a serial number on it. So it's not like oh my God, there's these guns out there that don't have serial numbers for the first time in American history. That's not the case. There's lots of other guns out there, factory-made guns that are still in existence that do not have serial numbers on them. Okay, so that's also going to play into this at some point in some way, right? Now, again, we're focusing here on the before part, right? You know, the Polymer80s built before they finalize their rules, because what's going to happen is this is going to end up in the courts, right? It's going to be challenged. When the ATF, let's say that the final ruling, and we don't know what the final rule is going to be, because right now all we have is a proposal that seems to be very confusing. I keep hearing different interpretations of it, different. So when we get this final ruling, if it says that frames built in the past, right, have to be serialized, that's going to be challenged in court. Okay. Now, there's lots of courts out there. There's 12 districts. So what's going to happen is when this gets challenged in court, the lawyers are going to ask for what's normally called a stay. Okay. Now, the stay basically means that, hey, until we get a court decision, we ask that you postpone the deadline for when this would have to be serialized. So that's also really important. So regardless whether they say that we got to get them serialized within 60 days or 90 days or 3 months or 6 months or a year, regardless of what date they say, when it goes to the courts, that is most likely going to be extended, okay? Which is important, because that gives us time to figure out what we're supposed to do. And that's the thing. We're not going to know exactly what we're supposed to do. So what's the best thing to do? Wait, okay? Wait until this actually works its way through the courts. And here's the thing, it's going to work its way through the courts. We got 12 districts. We're going to get conflicting decisions within the districts, which is then going to head up to the appeals level. And then we're going to end up probably with numerous, a number of these federal districts giving us conflicting opinions, okay? And at that point, it's going to end up like the bump stock ban, because are bump stocks now legal or the illegal? I don't know. We've got one federal appeals court that says that they're illegal, and we got another federal district court that says they're legal. So we don't know yet. So unless the Supreme Court decides to accept that case and rule on it, we're just not going to know. Okay. So I think the same thing is going to happen with these Polymer80s with regards to, do the existing ones, the ones that are already in circulation, do they need to be serialized? If the ATF says that they do, it's going to run its way through the courts. We're going to get conflicting decisions. Unless the Supreme Court ultimately accepts the case and decides that, and gives us a decision, we're going to remain in a perpetual state of not knowing, okay? So how do you deal with this perpetual state of not knowing? Well, basically, you just stay low. You just wait until you do it. Now, what that means, right, is I would not recommend that, let's say you typically carry a gun, right? I would not recommend that you carry an unserialized Polymer80 if the ATF says that it should be, okay? Because if it goes to court, right, if you end up using it in a self-defense type of situation and you end up in court, you don't want that to muddy up your defense, okay? So I would probably recommend that you not carry a Polymer80, even though I like carrying a Polymer80. At that point, I would probably not want to carry that Polymer80. I would get some other gun to carry. So that's how, now as far as, so basically you're hiding your guns, all right? So that's what it comes down to. You're hiding your guns. You're taking them unloaded to the gun range so you can practice. You can bet, it's a sure bet that the range safety officer over there is not going to care if you've got a Polymer80 with serial number on it or without serial number. If you think about it now, when you go to the gun range, they don't check your guns, right, to see are they serialized, not serialized, is it yours or somebody. They don't care. As long as you're a member in good standing, you go in and you shoot your guns. Okay, as long as you're safe, they don't care. Okay, so I mean, I am a range safety officer, and that's pretty much the only thing I'm concerned with is, did you pay your dues, and are you safe? Okay, are you safe to yourself? Are you safe to other people? That's the only thing a range safety officer is concerned with. They other than, are you following the range rules? Other than that, they don't care. They're not going to care if your Polymer 80 is serialized or not serialized, especially in an environment where we have this unknown of, is it, does it have to be serialized or does it not have to be serialized? We don't know until we get a final ruling from the Supreme Court. We're not going to know. Okay, so now something for you guys to keep in mind. Okay, keep an eye on, rather. Keep an eye on. There is a case working its way through the courts, through the appeals courts. I think it's like ready for Supreme Court's consideration. It's the EPA versus Georgia. Okay. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but this is all second-hand knowledge I'm getting. But Georgia is suing the EPA, to basically saying that the EPA, which is a government agency, does not have the power to make law. Okay, so if the Supreme Court says that the EPA, a government agency, does not have the power to make law, then that will also apply to the ATF. So keep an eye on that, because that's probably going to come up before an ATF, Polymer 80 case comes up. Okay, so that will give us a good indication of how things are going to go. So up until now, we've been talking about the before, right? Polymer 80s built before the June 2022 deadline. What about after? Okay. Well, because here's the thing: there's a different type of pressure that a government agency can put on citizens, because there's lots of us out there, spread out all over the place. It's really hard for them to control us, right? The choke point, the point of control, is usually the point of sale, all right? So if you think about it, like the point at which they control whether you're able to get a gun or not get a gun right now is through the FFLs, right? Because you go to a gun store, right? Before they complete the sale, they got to do the background check. So that's the choke point. So what I think their end game is, right? What they're really, what I really think, I'll just hold this thing over here. Yeah, I'm just gonna hold it for you guys like this so you can read it. So what I think their end game really is that they're trying to get the slides and the upper receivers on ARs serialized, right? So that those parts need to go through an FFL. I think that's the choke point that they're looking for. That's where they want to go. I think that's the only thing that, if they get that, I think they would consider that a victory, because they know that there's no way that they're going to be able to go into everybody's house and find out if they have any Polymer 80s that they have not serialized. Okay, basically they're not coming as the current situation is right now. If they're going to come to your house, they're not just coming to take your Polymer 80s. They're coming to take all your guns. All right. So if they're raiding your house, they're coming for all your guns. They're not just coming for the ones that are not serialized. Okay. So that's a way of looking at this. So yeah, and I've done other videos on this. You always want to have a couple of guns hidden, right? Someplace out of reach, unseeable. Just hide some guns and forget about them, right? Hide guns and ammo and forget about them. That's one of the nice things about these Polymer 80s. You build yourself, because obviously some of them are really expensive, but you can build some of them cheap. Build yourself a couple of cheap ones, bury them somewhere, forget about them, okay? So if they're coming to your house, they're not just coming for your Polymer 80s, they're coming for all your guns, okay? So the choke point, right? The point where they're going to try and enforce this is by forcing all of the slides to have to go through an FFL. I think because they know that with the frames, they know that people can 3D print them, right? So if they say that, hey, Polymer 80 can't sell any more 80% frames, or let's say now, they gotta be whatever 70% frames or 50% frames, they know that people are just going to just start buying 3D printers, which are getting cheaper and cheaper, and just start 3D printing the frames, right? But they can't do that with the slides. So that's why I think that that is the end goal here for the ATF. They want to get serial numbers on the slides and force all the slides to go through a background check, because the slide's made out of metal, and it's a lot harder to complete that, right? Because it's just much harder. Fewer people will want to do that. Okay. So where are we now? What am I recommending? Build as many as you possibly can. Get as many parts as you possibly can before the June 2022 deadline. Here's the thing. Don't wait until May. When we get to May, everything's going to be sold out. Okay, they're probably going to start selling everything out by April, right? And whatever's available, the price is going to double, triple, quadruple. Right now, like I looked at, right now we're in February of 2022. The prices don't look like they've gone up a whole lot. In some cases, they're a lot cheaper than they were last year in 2021. Think to yourself, how many of these Polymer 80s do you think that you would like to have for the rest of your life, your kids' life and your grandkids' life? Figure out how many you want and get it now. Get it now. At least get the slides now, because the slides, I think, are going to be the focal point, right? The slides is going to be the focal point where they're going to be, where they're going to basically try to get the slides to all have to go through an FFL. And then at that point, they've got to register, because everything that goes through an FFL ends up in their database. All right, that's the new information that's come out. They're collecting all the information from the FFLs and putting it into a database. Did a prior video on this. They're saying that it's not a searchable database, but any half-ass programmer can take any database and write a program so it becomes searchable. So that's another thing for the Republicans to go after once they take power. They have to get that database destroyed, okay? And there also has to be criminal penalties, right, and charges for anybody that tries to save this database, right? That has to, because it's obviously any database can be easily backed up. So anybody caught saving that information needs to be subject to criminal penalties. So that's my thoughts on this. So going back to the original idea, the original question. Do I think that existing Polymer 80s will be grandfathered in? When it goes through the entire process and works its way through the courts, I think, yes, they will be grandfathered in. Simply because they really can't do anything. They got no other choice, because there's no way to force enforcement. Okay, there's just too many of them out there. I would say there's at least 2 million of them out there. In fact, I would say that in 2021 and 2022, I would say that Polymer 80 sold more frames than Glock did. Okay, so they have no way of enforcing the ones that are already out there in public hands. Their focal point is going to be the new sales, right? And that's what it is always, right? It's always the focus is always on the new sales. When the EPA, bureaucratically, changes the EPA standards on your car, right? They don't go back to the old cars. They don't go back to the car that you already own. They go to the new cars that you're gonna be buying, right? So they're always looking. So the choke point is always looking forward into the future. Now with the cars, they are able to affect because they gotta go. Cars have to go in for a yearly inspection. So they do also keep raising the inspection standards, right? So and nowadays they come up with stupid stuff like you can't have any rust under the car and stuff like that. So with the cars, because they have to go in for a yearly inspection, and they have to go in because you're driving the car out in the road where everybody can see you, where the government can see you, that's where they control you, right? They control you. They enforce it when you go to buy a car. They enforce their new rules when you go to get an inspection. Okay, but the guns, because they can stay in your house, they can stay hidden on you. They're not subject to that type of inspection. So they have to focus on the new sales, and I think that's where they're going to put their efforts on, because the government kind of works as a business, right? They're not going to waste their their efforts trying to go after things that they know that they really can't do. They're going to go after the things that they think that they have a better chance of controlling. So those are my thoughts on that. And like I said, I'm just giving you guys an opinion based on all the information I've been able to gather. If you have a different opinion, by all means, put in the comments section below. It helps the algorithms, helps circulate the videos, and bring this information to more and more people. By the way, that's another reason why they kind of have to grandfather the old Polymer80s, because you know what? A lot of people have just built these, and they really don't follow the news on a day-to-day basis. They don't even know that about these proposed rule changes, right? So a lot of people may have built one or two, and they say, okay, this is cool, and then they moved on to other hobbies. They don't even know about the proposed rule changes. So that's why it's kind of impossible to retroactively make people comply with these rule changes. They have to pretty much focus on the new sales going forward. So the solution is build now, buy the parts now, and those are my thoughts on this. So drop some comments below. If you're not on the channel, subscribe, hit the bell button so you get notification of new videos. Talk to you all soon.